Good morning. My name is Alex Cherney, and today is June the 16th, 1998. I'm here to interview Phyllis Loebenberg about her experiences in the Holocaust. The purpose of the interview is to add to the oral history program of the Montreal Holocaust Center. The tape will be deposited in the archives of the center. The videographer today is Barry Stallman. Mrs. Loebenberg, thank you very, very much for being here with us today. Just for the record, I know I've got this information, but I'd like to ask you to spell your name for the tape.
Loebenberg.
And your first name?
Phyllis.
Your address, please, and phone number?
987 White Street, Wilson, Laurent.
Phone?
747-7070.
What was your date of birth, Phyllis?
December 17, 1929.
And where were you born?
I was born in Wielun, a small town in Poland.
Am I correct in the spelling? W-I-E-L-U-N? Wielun?
Yes, yes.
What was your maiden name, your family name at birth?
Krimalovsky.
And your parents' names, your father and mother?
His name was Faivo, my father,
yeah.
And my mother's name was Brandla.
Brandla. And what was her family name? What was her maiden?
Pavlovich.
Pavlovich. Did you have brothers and sisters?
Yes, I had 4 brothers and no sisters.
No sisters. Where did you fit into the family as far as...
The second from the oldest. I had an older brother.
And 3
then
younger
was
brothers.
me, and then I had 3 younger brothers.
I see. What was Wieland like? Was it, how big a place would it have been?
It was a small town, but it was a town, wasn't a village. There were there was a big church, there were 2 markets, and there was a nice Jewish synagogue. And
was a large proportion of the population Jewish, or how do you think?
There was a lot of
Jews.
population Jewish, but they were also Polish.
Polish, I see. And what language did you speak at home?
At home, we had a maid. I spoke Polish.
Yeah.
And to my parents, I spoke Jewish.
And your parents, between themselves, spoke Jewish, I guess. Between themselves.
I guess Jewish,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah. What was your father's occupation?
My father had a transport business with trucks going from Wielun to Chizkiyahu.
Transporting what kind of things?
Merchandise for people that needed things too.
And in Wielun, was it an industrial town, or was it the center of an agricultural? Who did your father deal with? Do you know? Or was it
with merchants?
Merchants
that wanted things taken to Chizkiyahu and brought from Chizkiyahu. And
okay. What do you remember about your house where you lived?
We had a very big house, a beautiful house, because my grandfather, who lived in Buffalo, who left before the war, he left it there for my parents. And I remember that during the war, when they tried to get the people together, there were many families living in our house.
I see.
Like there was one big room, maybe 4 or 5 with curtains divided. And that's what I remember.
So your father, it sounds like your family was quite well off.
Oh, yes.
You had a maid, you had
We
servants.
had a maid, we had a big house.
And a big house.
And he had a good business, yes.
And he had a good business. Tell me about your brothers a little bit, their names.
My oldest brother's name was Avram. And he actually went away They sent him away. At the beginning of the war, they got my father to go to a camp.
Yeah.
And he went after my father. He was a young boy. And he went to a camp that I remember. The name was Leshno, Lisa, they called it. And that's it. We never heard of him. A little bit at the beginning, my mother was sending packages. That was my oldest brother. Then I had 3 younger brothers. One was Chaim. Chaim, Itzik, and Mendel. 3 younger ones.
And did they survive?
Nobody
survived.
No.
I see. School. Did you go to?
I went to a public school, but I don't know, 2 grades or 3 grades, not much, 4 grades.
I see.
It was in public school.
Was it a Polish mixed?
Mixed, yes.
Was it near your house? Did you walk to go to school, or how did you?
I walked.
You walked?
I walked.
Did you have Polish friends, or were most of your friends Jewish?
No, I had only Jewish.
Oh.
I don't remember having Polish.
The people who lived around you were all Jewish?
Yeah.
It was a Jewish...
Yes, a lot of Jews, The whole street was Jewish.
I see. Was yours a religious family?
I wouldn't call it religious after what I see now, but observant. I think we had kosher in the house, and my father went. If he came home in time, we went to synagogue on Saturday.
He didn't work on Saturday.
He didn't work on Saturday, no. But Friday, sometimes I remember him coming late, and he sort of sneaked in.
I see. And what other family activities do you remember from that time when you were growing up? Did you belong to any organizations, clubs?
I was very young now.
Yeah. Were you part of a big family? Did your parents have a lot of...
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. My father had his parents. He had a few brothers and uncles, all kind of family, yes.
In that same
In the same
neighborhood?
Yes.
Were your parents originally from that?
Everybody was born there, but my mother's family left for the United States.
Was that the grandfather that left the house?
My grandfather in Buffalo with his wife, a second wife, and a lot of children.
So your mother remained behind.
My mother was the only one that remained behind.
What were the circumstances of that? Was she already a little older by the time?
My mother, because my father's family was there, and I guess...
So she was already growing up when...
My mother?
When her father went to Buffalo.
They left before the war.
Yeah, but so your mother was already growing up.
She was married.
She was married.
I was born already.
Oh, I see. Okay. Wanted to ask you about your relatives. You had uncles and aunts and cousins and...
I had lots of relatives, but now one thing I remember is my grandfather and my grandmother were shot in Vienna just before they evacuated us. They took all the old people, and that I remember because everybody talked about it. They just shot the older people.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
So you were about 10 years old when the Germans arrived. What do you remember about the first days of the war?
Well, I remember we went away, we had a truck. So we went to Pabianice, a little closer to Lodz, and we didn't get there much because right away the Germans came. And
Where were you running from?
From Wielu,
I know,
because it was on the border.
It was close to the border, that's right.
So people were trying to get away from the border. They felt maybe on the border will be a war, and then, but they caught right away up everybody, and we returned back to our home.
Before the Germans arrived, do you remember Was there a lot of talk in the family about what was going to happen, about war and all that?
I don't remember.
You don't
much.
remember that much about that.
You know, maybe they were talking, my parents,
Yeah.
but I wasn't.
So you didn't. You went to.
I didn't know anything.
You mentioned you had only 3-4 years. Yeah, I guess by the time you were 10 years old, that's all you had time
No, but-
for
Yeah.
before the war.
I
Right.
don't remember going to school during the war.
No. Okay, so the Germans, did they arrive in Violin right away themselves?
They arrived, they were bombing the city. My father had to remain in Violin. He was going to join us because he was something like, I can't explain, he was looking after things, not his business, but the government something, so they didn't let him out. And then he came, then he left, he went towards Warsaw. But of course also he was caught on the way and he came back.
What is your memory of that trip, that first, when you ran away from Wieland?
Well, I didn't think much about it. I didn't know anything about it. We just went.
Was it a panic scene?
No, not for me, because I didn't.
On the roads, were there a lot of people
On the roads.
running? You don't.
Probably, I can't
you don't
remember. We were in a truck.
So who was driving the truck? If your father wasn't there.
Probably some other people were there.
So then you came back, and then your father
came
also.
back.
You all
We
came.
went
You
to
all
our-
came back.
We all came back. We went to our home,
Yeah.
and there we lived there for another 2 years, actually.
And what do you recall of that period when you were living in the house? The Germans were there, but
The Germans were there, and they crowded in a lot of people in our home.
did they make kind
They
of a
were-
ghetto out
I
of?
don't know if that was a ghetto, but a lot of people came on
Came.
that same street there. We were allowed to live there, and we were living there.
Was your father allowed to continue working?
No, they took away
They
the
took-
trucks.
they took away the
He
truck?
didn't work anymore.
I see. So what did you all do during that period? You couldn't go to school,
No, we were living.
just staying.
Then I remember once they were evacuating, and we were hidden in an attic, the whole building, and hidden in the attic. And how long can you be hidden? And then we decided already we're not going to be hidden. We go down. We're going to give ourselves up and go. So we all went down, and they didn't need any more people. So we lived again. I don't know how long, maybe 6 months, maybe 7 months. And then there was another evacuation that I remember, because we were all taken to a church. All the Jews. And in that church, I don't know what went on. All I remember is we were together, my whole family, except my oldest brother. My father, they had a rope around some people, lots of people was a rope around. Apparently, my friend tells me they asked who can sew, who can do something. I didn't hear, I didn't know anything, but my father lifted up the rope, and he pushed me there, and he says, stay there, I come. I will come. I go back, I'm going to come later. And I waited alone, and I waited, and he never came. I really hated him. All the years, I couldn't forgive him.
You felt abandoned.
But now I realize he tried to save me. He never came, so I went to, then the next morning they shipped us out to a school.
Who was in that group?
All the Jews that were left in Violin, but there was one man, his name was Bruder, he was like a chief, he was a Jew. And I went to him in the morning, we were in a school, Sunday way, and I said to him, I want to go back to my parents. So he says, in the morning. The same day I ran, I cried to him, I want to go back, I don't want to be, I had nobody there. And he says, in the morning. In the morning, they passed by the trucks, all the trucks I remember covered up with plastic, with rope, and I know what happened. He never came, but for many years, quietly, I couldn't believe what my father did to me. I was ashamed to tell anybody I've ever had a father. There was no talk about father. I couldn't. Nothing about my parents, not about my mother, nothing. Just, I felt he did me a great. Then in that place I found an uncle and a cousin.
What was the place that
It
you
was
landed
a school.
at? A school?
A Bulgaria school. And that's we were sitting there, I don't know, a few days, or I don't know how long, I don't remember. But then we were shipped out all to Lodz, to a ghetto. And that's how I was in the ghetto, with my uncle, with my cousin. My cousin survived, he's in Israel. And my uncle, we were in the ghetto, and my cousin and me, we were looking after him. He was so sick, and we gave him to eat, and he was dead. We were trying to feed him. We didn't know what was happening. My cousin was even younger than me, a little bit. And that's how we sort of lived in the ghetto.
What were the conditions under which you lived in the ghetto?
A family adopted me. My cousin went to live with Rumkowski. Also, he adopted him like somebody that was in charge of the ghetto. And because we were two young children, I was younger than I was. And a family adopted me. They took care of me. They took me in, and I lived with them.
What was the family name?
Bernamen.
Bernamen?
Yes, and they were kind to me. I survived on account of them, but I also went through a lot. They all died. It was a big family. First of all, in the house where I lived was another daughter, older than me, and myself. And they're the parents. They were so nice to me. They called me. They wanted me to call her Ma, which I couldn't. I said, what? And then there came a time that in the lodge they needed people. Like the Jews, they were looking after that to ship out people. Of course, they went for people who were alone, that had single books. When you came and you got a book. So they came to look for me. And they wouldn't let go of me. They hid me. I remember how and what. They were hiding me at night. It was a big cupboard when you walked into the door, standing, those big wardrobes. And in the corner, I was sitting there, and the clothes was hanging, and the doors were open, so they could see there was nobody there. And they came twice to look for me like that, and that's how I survived. Because whoever went away, they took, is finished.
Never came back.
Yes.
Who was coming to look for you? Was it the
Jewish,
Germans or the Jewish police?
That they needed, the Germans wanted so and so many people, I guess, I don't know, so out of there. So after that, they of course took away my book. I wouldn't get nothing to eat. In the ghetto we got a little bit of food. So my book was taken away. So the people shared with me whatever they had. We had very little. The adopted people, they shared with me whatever, bread and whatever.
How did you pass the days when you were in
the ghetto? I went to, I had a cousin through there, my father's a cousin who worked in a paper. They made paper things. So he got me there to work and to learn, to study a little bit. Half a day study was like school, and half a day working. And I also worked in the straw factory at the beginning, before I found my cousin. Mm-hmm. They put me to work. They took everybody to work.
Was it hard? Very hard work? Was it hard?
I wouldn't say hard. I wasn't say hard. We worked all day.
And what did you see around you? Was there disease and people dying?
Oh yes, in the street. You saw in the gutters, here people, there people. But it was nothing to what happened after.
You mentioned a cousin who got you this job in the paper.
Yeah, he gave me here and there a soup. He had a little food there, and that helped me too a little bit.
What was your cousin's name?
His name? He was my father's cousin, Lefkovich. Morris Lefkovich. He lived in Australia after the war.
He survived also.
He survived, yes.
He was older than
He was my father's age. He survived, but he's not living now.
I see. So how long were you in the ghetto?
I would say I have it 2 years.
2 years.
2 years I have the day.
So that brings you to what, to 1941, 42?
No.
42?
42 I went to the ghetto, right?
Oh,
I was in jail
right.
2 years. I have the day.
That's right, 41. So that must bring you to about 43.
I don't even need it. I was in the ghetto in 42, from Violin to the ghetto 42, and I lived there till 44.
44. Did you have any news from the outside about family, friends, relatives?
Nothing. I wasn't interested. I was nothing. I didn't hear nothing. I didn't see nothing. I didn't know nothing. I guess I blocked everything out of my mind. Mm-hmm. But then till 44, right?
So 44.
In 1944, I think it was in the fall, they evacuated the ghetto, the last thing, and they shipped everybody out. And they sent me to Auschwitz. Auschwitz, you know.
What was...
Auschwitz.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to get a picture of the day that it happened. How did it...
It was in the fall. It was, everybody knows that in in August they took us out from the ghetto. August. Yeah, I remember it was still warm. I had nothing to wear, it was warm. And we were sent to Auschwitz. And I was clinging to that adopted family because that Mrs. Burneman had a lot of relatives. She had sisters and brothers and a lot of people. And we were together in Auschwitz. And then they took them away to somewhere. And I was left alone. I was young. In Auschwitz, when I came to Auschwitz, I was sent on one side. They were sent on the other side. I didn't know what the sides were, absolutely. But of course, I wanted to be with the family. So it wasn't such a strict... So I pushed myself on the other side to be together. And I was together.
Did they have the women separate from the men?
Pardon?
Did they have the women separated from the men?
The women separated, and the younger, I guess I was on that side, I was very young looking. So I went with them. And then we were in Auschwitz a few weeks, not very long. Then again, they took out people. And again, that family, they left there, a child, and they went somewhere segregated there, and I was on the other side. And I remember they called a name, I don't know what name, and I was already there on the other side with them. That's how and I never forget how that Mrs. Burneman saw me. And she grabbed me, and she hugged me, and she cried. And then we were sent to the real horror place. I guess it was better to be in Auschwitz. Believe me, it was better to be in Auschwitz than where we were sent. We were sent to actually a Krapir camp. It wasn't a concentration. It was a camp where they put women, and it's only meant to die. They didn't even bother to very little food, no work, very little. It was a terrible camp, a terrible camp.
Was it nearby Auschwitz?
No, we were going by, it was near Königsberg. It was in Prussia. What also I remember, which I have to say, that there were times they sent us out to dig up beets and potatoes, and I went, and I have to say that there was a German soldier guarding us, and every day from his canteen he gave me something to eat, some soup. He looked for me, I looked every day he took out a little bit of food, and he gave me. That I remember. And it was a terrible place. 60,000 women passed what I read in the Judaica, and 2,000 survived. You know, but it wasn't such a surviving, because at the end they also were killing. It was a terrible camp.
So they sent you out to do work in the fields sometimes?
Sometimes they needed something like to dig up potatoes.
It wasn't a regular...
It wasn't a regular work. It wasn't a regular place where you could work. Because once you worked, you got something to eat. No, they were just giving you very little food. A little bit of... So I remember things that... I remember I was standing a big barrel of soup. And there was nobody around. And I took my plate, and I went to get a bit of soup. I dug in, and I took the soup. I was holding it, and I ran back and a soldier ran after me. And he kicked me, and he knocked me, and I wasn't going to give him back the soup. I was holding it so tight, and he was kicking and knocking me. And when he let go, and I looked, it was nothing in the soup.
Nothing.
Not even nothing. That's what I remember. Yeah. I was brave. I wanted to... Yeah.
There was you mentioned there was one kindly soldier
on the fields where I worked a little bit, so he gave me a little food, yes.
Did anyone else treat you with any kindness or help other than that one German soldier?
Nobody.
Nobody.
Nobody that I can remember, nobody. And nobody, not on the family, nobody. We just were sitting there getting a little bit of food, doing nothing, going to getting undressed and dressed. I don't remember what went on there, just on barracks, on the boards lying there. I remember one thing, that, in a room we were sitting, that they brought in a lot of women they were from Hungary, I didn't know. And it was so tight in that room. There was no room where to sit, so tight. And after a few days, you could practically lie down. They were carrying out people dying. You know, when you had to go to the washroom, you were crossing mountains of skeleton, of bodies, mountains. You had to climb over. It was undescribable.
Were those people dying from disease or from hunger or both?
Hunger.
Hunger.
I would say hunger. There was a disease too. I was sick too, but it was mostly hunger. That was the idea. That was the idea. They didn't give you enough food. And those Hungarian ladies, they weren't conditioned. Like I was conditioned already. So they were dying like flies. Right away to such a camp. At the end of the camp,
you had some practice in the ghetto, and then you had some practice in the ghetto. And
slowly, my stomach shrunk.
Yeah.
You know, I remember my feet were all frozen, which I still have frozen toenails in that concentration camp because we had nothing to wear, and my toes froze. When the winter, it was only through the winter we were there. One winter.
One winter. Must have been the longest winter of your life.
The longest winter. Then we could hear already bombings, the Russians. It wasn't far from Russia. We could hear they were throwing bombs at them, and nothing bothered me. So they took all the people out of the concentration camp, and they made us march out of there because the Russians were getting near. They made
were you still together with Mrs. The woman who took care of you?
No.
She
died. Slowly everybody died in the concentration camp.
She died.
I was the only one, and I couldn't figure out why.
She died.
Everybody. There was a daughter, there was Mrs. Burnham, and there was cousins and sisters. everybody slowly died. Slowly. I think first even the daughter died. I don't remember who died first. Everybody was dying there like... then they took... No, I had nobody. But there were a few young survivors that I met. One lives in Peru, and one... we were being marched to a boat, put on a boat. One boat was burning. We were all put on a boat, on a kettle boat, down and up.
How long was this march?
That was in
45.
45. In the spring of 40, just before the liberation.
How long did you have to march to get to the boat?
I don't remember. There's a lady, I hope you get in touch with her. She should make an interview. She was with me. I mean, I didn't know her at all, but I know she was there.
She was there.
And she told me, then we were put on a boat. Everybody got, according to her, I don't remember, a piece of bread and something, a piece of margarine, something. And we were put on those boats, kettle boats, down, below, like straw on straw, with nothing. And the Germans took off. They didn't go, and there was nobody to put the boat to go. I mean, it went, but probably it was for drowning, right? There was nobody. There were a few Russian prisoners of war, and that they were, and they were sort of pushing the boat. It was floating around, according to the lady, I don't know, 10 days without any food. I remember I tried to chew the straw, that was sitting on it, just to chew it. And I don't remember. I remember people were bringing up water from the Baltic, but she says it was not salty, the water, but it had to be salty. That lady remembers a little bit more. She was all there. And we went, and we shifted, and went according to 10 days, the boat went. And we docked in the middle of the night in a place. We came to a stop. In the middle of the night, we tried to climb up. People were helping one another to climb out of we didn't have strength to get out of that boat. And according, there were partisans working that they had the ropes going from the boat to the land to hold on to the ropes to go through the water. It wouldn't go all the way. So we got to the shore. I remember I walked from the shore away. I tumbled, I walked. And we walked to homes. People were living there. I didn't know where we were. It was Germany. Of all the places, we landed in Germany. And the German women, middle of the night, they saw what was happening. They brought out bread to give to the people. And I remember I got some bread, and I kept it in my dress. I couldn't eat it. I couldn't swallow it, not a bite. I couldn't eat nothing. And surely, soon after, people came with a red band, German, and they tried to line us up and shoot people. We went back to the boat, near the boat. They were whoever couldn't get out of the boat, they were shooting. What I remember is the water from the shore to the boat was red from blood. That I remember. And they lined us up and they asked us to walk somewhere. And we walked. And whoever couldn't walk fast enough, civilians, they were shooting. People were dropping and shooting. Whoever couldn't walk fast enough. Then we came
These
to...
These were German civilians?
Civilians. There were no soldiers there or any, but it was a city. It was Neustadt. And then I remember we were on a big field, like a baseball field, and they were bringing something to eat, some soup, something to eat, and they were trying to keep us. And then, I don't know, people started to get away, to run away. So me too, I went somewhere, I ran away, and I ended up in a carpentry place, with a lot of sawdust. And I lied there waiting to die or whatever. And English came in the middle of the night, the English soldiers. It was the end of the war. It was May the 3rd. English soldiers came and they looked in with flashlights, and they saw the people lying there in the sawdust, and with sores, with wounds, so they were passing medication to put on the wounds on sticks. They didn't want to go near. Like, who could apply and who could do anything? And in the morning, they came back, and I was so scared there. Oh, they're coming back, the Germans, they're coming back. I was sitting trembling. I was alone. Trembling. That's all I was doing, is that they're going to come back. Well, they didn't come back. Somebody came, an English soldier, and he took me under the arms and put me in the hospital in Neustadt. And I was in a hospital separate. I think I had typhus. I was very sick. I had a high fever, and I was being fed with a straw.
Was it a military hospital or was it a civilian?
No, a civilian hospital.
The German,
German hospital, Neustadt,
yeah.
in Neustadt,
Yeah.
a hospital, a big hospital. And a lot of people died in the hospital. And I was alone in a little room there. They shaved off my head, I remember. They fed me, and I don't know what they were doing. I was sleeping most of the time. And after a while, they put me downstairs to a room, to a big ward. And that when I was downstairs, that English soldier came with a green coat. He brought me a coat, a present. He came to see what I was doing, whether I lived or whatever. I don't know what happened to the coat. Don't know. And from there on, they sent me to Sweden.
Do you remember the soldier's name?
No,
No.
nothing. I never knew, I never remembered. They sent me, I was so sick, they sent me to, I would like to have remembered,
Yeah.
but I didn't. They sent me to Sweden.
Who sent you? Was it a Jew?
I think it was the Canadian Jewish Congress. I found out later on because
the joint.
first of all, I was in a pension, like we got good food, and I can remember the Swedish people, so kind, so nice. We got good food, and after a while, it must be the Canadian Jew, they sent me to a school. I was for about 2 years in a boarding school, or a little bit long, in Sweden.
In Sweden. What part, where in?
Where I have pictures in Borough, near in Visings, Forsbacka was a school. Forsbacka was the name of it. I have pictures, I have things, I should have brought that. I was in that school.
And you were you with a family in Sweden, or?
No, in a school, alone. An orphan school.
I see, you were boarding in this school.
A boarding school,
Boarding school, okay.
school, you know. And it was one day we were studying. There were coming people from Israel to talk and teaching us a little Hebrew. And I was all set to go to Israel. But then I found uncles in Sweden. They found me because
Had those uncles been there from before the war?
Yes. It's a funny thing how it happened, how I found them. And of course it was nice to be in a school. We studied, I studied, I had books, I learned, and we got good food.
In what language were you taught?
We started in German, because everybody understood a little bit German. And of Swedish, they taught us Swedish. Of course, Polish, a lot of Polish. Whoever knew Polish, it was like
Was that school entirely
Jewish school, all Jewish.
entirely
from the
for,
Canadian Jewish.
entirely for children from
just a boarding
refugee
school for
children?
yes. And how did I find my uncles? It's a story, because somebody got a letter from an uncle. She knew maybe, and I must have had addresses. I had a grandfather, I had uncles, and I tried to remember something. I couldn't. but I remembered names. So I dreamt at night. My mother told me, go right, you have a grandfather, and you have an uncle. So I wrote, I didn't, the names and all that, and address, 37 Butler. I never forget that. So in the morning I forgot.
37
My mother
Butler.
said in a dream. You know, when we left, we had our uncles and the addresses and things. So the next day, the same thing happened. So I ran out of bed and I wrote down 37 Butler. That's all. Where is that? Which city? So I wrote, I knew we had family in Buffalo, and I knew there was somebody in New York. So I wrote to Buffalo and to New York, to my grandfather, Shlomo Pavlovich. Then he changed his name, Saul Paul. You know, I knew those things. I wrote there, and I wrote here, and I wrote there. And one of my uncles lived on 37 Butler.
And he got
My grandmother lived there. She was a step-grandmother. She got that letter. And they got me in Sweden. They didn't even write or anything, but they sent me $25. I never forget that. I ran and I bought a watch. I took a friend of mine who lives in Israel now, and I bought myself a watch. I didn't even know how to put it on. Like the dials were the other way. She says, you're putting it wrong. I don't know what happened to the watch. And then they started to write to me, and then I wrote to them. And
the uncles that you found in Sweden,
they were in the States. In Sweden, I didn't. They lived in.
I thought I misunderstood.
No.
I thought you had found some uncles in Sweden.
No, I had nobody in
from the
Sweden.
States.
They found me because I gave my name to the Congress that I survived.
Right.
I was looking for my relatives,
Right.
for my parents, you know.
So you were in that school in Sweden for 2 years?
Maybe even more.
Yeah.
In a school. And then
Did you make good friends there? Did you make friends there?
There were people that were with me in the concentration that survived, you know, that I knew in Stutthof. One lives in Peru, Riegler, and one girl lives, Diamond, she lives in New Jersey, and another girl lives in New Jersey. They were all in the camp there in Stutthof. They all survived. We were all young, and we survived, and we were in the school. I don't know if everybody was in the same school, but yes. Well, mostly people from that they sent from Germany to Sweden, you know, to recuperate, I must say the Swedish people, they were so nice. They came to visit, they brought skis, we should go skiing, they brought things. I only remember very nice, a friend of mine that lives in Israel wrote to them for the longest time, because she remained in Sweden longer, so she knew how to do Swedish. And from there on, from Sweden...
Did you ever think of going back to Poland to see what...
I can't.
You can't.
I won't go back.
No.
No, I have no interest. No. My husband wants to go to Germany to visit his grandmother's grave, so we postponed. This I will go with him. But to Poland, I have no desire.
And at the time, there was no point or no possibility anyway. I mean,
No, I
at
had
that
no
time.
possibility.
No.
I gave my name every which way to my name to look for my family, you know, for my parents, for my brothers, for my brother in concentration camp. He died, and the others were gassed. I will never go back. I don't know what will be.
You found no survivors of your family, a cousin?
One cousin that I was in the ghetto with, he survived, and he lives in Israel, and he never called me. A couple of weeks ago he called me just to say hello. I see him. Every time I go to Israel, I see him.
What's his name?
Chaim Krmalowski, my first cousin.
Uh-huh.
Yes. He also was going to make a tape. We were talking about it.
Mm-hmm. what was the next step in your
my life.
After
From Sweden.
From Sweden? What happened?
From Sweden, after the schools, they gave us 2 or 3 years. I went to work a little bit in Sweden, in a big city, boroughs. I worked a little bit. They taught me how, not near a sewing machine. And for a little while. And then, of course, I really wanted to go to Israel.
You were about, what, 19 years
I
old?
was 18,
19 years old.
18.
Yeah.
I wanted to go to Israel, but then my uncles found me, of course, when I was in school there, and they tried right away to make papers to get me to the United States. In the meantime, the Congress Canada let in orphans from Sweden. So I don't remember. I wrote to my uncles whether I should go to Sweden with the group, whoever wanted to go. Most of the people went to Israel. So they said, yes, because from Canada to get to the United States is easy. So I came to Canada, and I lived...
You came under the...
from the Canadian Jewish Congress.
The Congress sponsored...
I was living on Gin Men's in an orphanage. There was an orphanage.
How did you come? You came by boat to...
By boat.
To New York or to Halifax?
To Halifax.
To Halifax.
I quit by boat. We waited a while in England. We went to England and we waited, and I came by boat. This was all organized by the Canadian Jewish Congress. Mm-hmm. And I came to Canada.
When was that you came?
The end of 47, Christmas time.
What were your first impressions of when you arrived in Halifax?
In Halifax, I arrived. There was a lady that looked after us. We were 36. Well, it was nice. Actually, at the beginning, I went to Toronto. They put everybody in Toronto. Then my uncles came and they to see me, and he didn't want me to be in Toronto. He had friends in Montreal, so he got me a room. First of all, I lived on Gin Men's in an orphanage, and then he got me a room. And I went to Barnbing High School, because I learned a lot in Sweden, in Polish. And
how did you adapt to the English language? Did you have any knowledge of it when you came?
When I came, a little bit, but I caught on fast.
You caught on fast?
Very fast, yes.
You went to high school, to Barnbing?
I went to high school. I remember I didn't know English, but she asked a question, I understood what it was, so I answered in Polish. I remember it like now, Louis Pierre. And then I found a girl who was in that school in the same class. She says, "You're Polish?" And we became very close friends.
Who was that?
She passed away, Libby Kaliski.
So you were living alone in a room and going to school?
Not alone in a room, in a family.
Oh, in a family. Oh, I see. Okay.
With a family.
Who was the family?
Good friend.
Good friend.
On Rachel and St. Lawrence in the corner.
Did they have?
They had a daughter.
They had a daughter.
Yeah, but my uncles paid for room and board. Then I moved. Then my aunt wanted me to be on the own. She didn't want to pay, so she wanted me to work. I went a little bit to business college, and I took very sick. I had thyroid condition. I had operations, and she didn't want me to go to school anymore. She wanted me to work. She didn't want to pay. My uncle wanted. So I started to work. I didn't know that much about bookkeeping or anything, but I got there and I worked a little while, and then I met my husband.
Where did you work?
I worked Canada.
The newspaper?
An assistant bookkeeper, yes. There was a newspaper, yes.
For how long?
I don't know. Till I got married, he didn't want me to work. My husband, a couple of years, I don't know.
Where did you meet your husband?
Yes, I met my husband in Sentegas. One of my uncles came to visit me, and we went for a day to Sentegas. For one day, we checked into the chalet to have lunch and to use their pool, the facility. And my husband was there, and we met, and we got married in 1950.
What's your husband's name?
Leo.
Was he also from Europe, or was
Well, he came as a German prisoner. He's German Jew.
I see.
And they sent him here with the like prisoners of war to a camp to live in. Well, all kind of places. And then they left. Then he went to McGill. He wrote matrix, and he went to McGill, and he graduated. He was an engineer, a consultant engineer, and now he's retired. And
so you met at the Chalet Hotel in St. Agathe.
Yeah, we
Was
met.
it love at first sight?
Apparently, because he took my phone number and he didn't write it down, and I was sure he will not call me but he called, and we went out, and it was July. We were married the following May, but by December already he gave me a bracelet written to my future wife.
Aside from the uncles that were helping you, did you have help from other people or organizations when you were first
There was a lot of help
arrived?
from the Canadian Jewish Congress, like they tried to buy me clothes, but my uncles said they will do that. They did a lot of things for others, and I didn't take much.
These uncles were from your mother's side.
My mother's brother. My mother, when I came, imagine my mother had 1, 2, 3, 4 brothers from one father. Then there was my father married at a second time. My grandfather married a niece, actually, which was also a cousin to mine. And there were 4 children, which are 3 still alive. And there was other children that passed away. And there is one of my uncles, of those 4 uncles, that lives now in Miami. And one just died last year at 94.
These are the Krimalovsky family.
No, Pavlovich.
From your mother's.
They called themselves Paul, P-O-H-L. My mother's brothers, my
right,
father's family, a cousin survived.
Right. I'd forgotten that. So you're still in touch with all those relatives, the ones that...
My uncle?
that remain?
Oh, yes, very much. He's 93.
And tell us about your life since 1950 when you got married. You had children?
Yes, I have 4 children. I have 3 children, 10 grandchildren. That's what I produced.
And where are these?
9 grandchildren live in Israel, and 1 lives here.
What were your children's name? What are your children's names?
Beatrice Zolty now, who has 4 children, and Ronald. He calls himself Chizkiyahu because he became very religious, very Hussid, and he has 5 children.
Those 2 live in Israel.
They all live in Israel. Yeah. And 1 son lives in Montreal. His name is Eric, and he has 1 child. An Israeli, a kibbutznik from the kibbutz, where my daughter lives in the kibbutz, a girl he brought himself.
Have you talked to your children about your early life?
For the longest time, I just couldn't talk about it. I don't know why. I was ashamed. Ashamed that I was in a concentration camp. There was no way I could talk to my children about anything like that. No talk. I couldn't talk to my husband. No, but it was something that I committed a crime or something. I don't know why. I don't know why I felt like this. I did not talk. But then, when I went to Israel, so my son wanted to know. He went to school there. He wanted to know what happened. We went to Yad Vashem, the two of us, and he wanted me to tell him where, what, everything. I did. I started to tell him things, not everything, but things. And every time he says to me, okay, you can't talk about it, let's go. So we were on a bus from Yad Vashem. Then he said, and what happened after? Every minute he wanted to know. He didn't want me to talk, but he wanted to know everything. So I told him everything, and then I started to tell my daughter, and now she was after me to make the tape. She and her friend, Anna, to make that. She says the biggest thrill she had about coming to Montreal is that I'm making the tape, Anna, my daughter's friend. Because I guess they want to know. They want to know what happened, which I didn't even tell her half of the things, because it would take days.
Is there anything you'd like to add to what we've talked about in this conversation? Is there anything you'd like to add?
I don't know. No. There's so much to talk, so many things.
This is your.
So many beatings I got for nothing. So many unreal things that nobody could believe, that I can't believe myself. Believe me, after the war was finished, when I started to talk to people that were with me, like that girl that survived and she lived in Peru, and she came to Montreal and she came to visit me, not specially, but she stayed. And we started to talk about things. I can't believe. She can't believe. It's unbelievable things that I had to. Like I met that lady that I hope she makes a tape, that was on the boat with me, but I didn't know her. She was older than me. She's an older lady. And we were sitting in Miami in a garden, and I said to her, we were talking, where were you and where were you? And I told her I was in Stutthof. She says, what? I was in Stutthof. And I say to her, I don't believe you, meaning that to see a survivor from so few survivors. So she called me the next day over on a bench to sit down with her, and I did. And she thought I didn't believe her. And she started to tell me the things that were going on there. The bodies that were lying there when we walked out, we had to go to the wash. The tremendous bodies of dead people and all the things. She started to tell me, was I there? Because I didn't mean that. I meant that it's unbelievable to meet somebody. And she thought I didn't believe her. She started to tell, and the boat. She told me that we were 10 days on the boat. And she got that piece of bread. She was standing upstairs, and somebody came and grabbed it away from her, stole that bread. They were Russian prisoners. And she says for 10 days she didn't even have that piece of bread. She just told me now. So she wanted to convince me that she was there, which I believed her. You know, and I hope I think she's reading some books here. She's doing some things. She said she would make a tape. I hope you get in touch with her. Maybe you did.
I don't. You gave her name to Natasha.
I gave the name to Natasha. I'm going to give it to you because she's an older lady.
Okay. Well, I'm sitting here speechless at hearing what you went through and how you managed to survive all this. It's an incredible.
And I think I'm normal too. I have lots of nightmares, of course, but.
Well, I hope that this will answer some of the questions maybe that your children and grandchildren have thought about your story.
Yes, they wanted me to make which really should be made, and after we die, because it's so few left, that it should be remembered what happened, because some say it never happened.
That's right.
You can hear sometimes
Yeah,
people say it
yeah.
never happened. It was just, it happened.
At the end of the tape, we're going to add some photographs and other things that that you've brought with you today. And in conclusion, I'd like to thank you, Mrs. Loebenberg, for sharing these painful memories with us. The tape will be deposited in the archives.
I thank you, because you were,
Well, it's a duty that we have to do. It has to be remembered, as you said.
but I would like to put also something. I would like to put that after years, I really realized, because I couldn't talk about that, my father didn't just leave me there. He just wanted to save me. He went back to my mother with the children, but me, he felt, of all the kids there, I was the oldest. He wanted to save me. So I realized what he was doing, because it took a long time. By myself, I didn't talk to anybody. I thought he just put me there to such torture, to such a life.
You forgave him for...
Yes.
That's good.
Because while I went through that, I would have liked to be with them. I would have many times. I didn't care about anything. When we walked in the, from concentration camp to that boat, the English were bombing, or the Russians were bombing, the bombs were falling, people were hiding in the ditches. I just walked. I didn't care. I absolutely didn't care. Whether a bomb falls on me, I wasn't hiding or anything, and I don't know how I survived.
Well, I think that your story is a tribute to the human spirit, and hopefully not people
This will never happen again to our children.
Or to anybody's children.
To anybody's children, to anybody.
Thank you very much. This has been Alex Cherney and Barry Stallman interviewing Phyllis Loebenberg on June the 16th, 1998. Thank you very much.
This is my mother and my father. My mother's name is Brandla Pavlovich. My father's name is Faivo Kremalovsky. And I remember them like that.
How old were they when they disappeared during the war?
Very young. I don't know exactly. My mother was born, I think, 1902 or 4. Somebody was born 1904. 1902, and she disappeared in 1942, so she was about 40 years old.
Yeah.
Probably my father the same, they were the same age. But this is my mother, Brandla Pavlovich, and this is her brother, Irving Pavlovich, which he changed his name to Paul, Irving Paul, who was still alive.
Living in
Miami.
In Miami.
Very kind. That is my uncle Philip Paul.
In the back?
In the back. And this is my grandmother Tsipra Pavlovich, Paul now. And this is my father, Faivo Kremalovsky.
In front of your father is?
In front of my uncle Philip is my Aunt Faye, who lives in Buffalo. And next to her is my Aunt Miriam. And next to her, that's my grandfather, Shloimalai Pavlovich, known in Poland, and his son Paul. And this is my uncle Jack Paul, P-O-H-L, Palak Pavlovich. There comes my mother, Brandla Pavlovich, and there comes another uncle who died, Harold Pavlovich.
So of that, on that photograph,
Is my father, my mother.
Who has survived? No?
My uncle just died on the top, that gorgeous man.
On the top
He
left,
just
yeah.
died not even a year ago.
Yeah.
And then it survived my aunt, the three.
The three.
The three,
Okay.
the bottom, yeah, they're all survived. This is my family. This picture was taken, I remember, shortly before the war, because my mother sent it away and she wasn't sure if it's gonna get there. The war broke out. So there is my mother, Brandla Pavlovich. There is my youngest brother, Mendel. There comes my oldest brother, Avrum, and then comes me. Then there is my father. Then there is my other brother, Chaim, and another brother, Itzhak. There is my mother with one of my brothers, and there is my oldest brother, and then it's me and my father. And all those pictures were sent to my uncles, to my grandparents, and they gave them to me. They made copies.
Sure were a cute little girl.
Mm. There is my mother, Brandla Pavlovich, and her husband, my father, Faivel Kramalovsky, and between them is my oldest brother, Avrum, and then there is me and my younger brother. This is my oldest brother, who just before the war, my father wanted him to go to the States, here to be saved. He knew already something, and he sent a picture to my grandfather, this picture. His name is Avrum Kramalovsky. That was me. I was in Sweden in school. And I sent away to Poland. I asked him to send me a passport, something like this, so that's what they sent me.
What is your name in Polish? Phyllis is kind of an...
Fela.
Fela.
It's written there, Fela,
yeah,
yes.
Right. That's what made me think of it.
Yeah, my uncle started to call me Phyllis when I came.
And you use this document to travel, to come to...
No.
No?
From the right is my daughter Beatrice, who lives in a kibbutz in Israel. She has 4 children. But the oldest one already finished the army. Her name is Elli, and there is a son, Yoni. Then she has 2 children from a different marriage, which is Sivan and Maya. She has 4 children. In the middle is my son, who became very religious, and he has 5 children. Yaakov, Natan, Moshe Nachman, Shifra Leah, and Elisheba.
And what's his wife's name?
And the wife's name is Batya. Batya is born in New Jersey. And they live in Israel, in Jerusalem. And there is my son, my baby, Eric, who lives in Montreal. He's a computer expert, and he has... I met him. Go ahead. Oh, this is my husband, Leo, and myself.
Around what year?
We were married in 1950, So it should be 54. That's my husband Leo, and myself, I would say around in the 60s, 1960. Something. That's my daughter Beatrice and her husband Avraham, and the two children, Elli and Yoni. This is her second marriage. And it was in about 12 years ago. That's again my daughter Beatrice and her husband Avraham. Oh, that's my daughter Beatrice and her daughter Elli, who's in the army, in the Israeli army now, and they all live on a kibbutz. That's again my daughter Beatrice, her husband Avraham, the daughter Elli, and the son Yoni. There is myself, my husband Leo, my daughter-in-law Bosmat. Next is my son, my youngest son Eric, and again my daughter Beatrice and her husband Abraham. There is my husband Leo, and my youngest granddaughter Laura, and my daughter-in-law Bosmat. There is again Laura. She's my youngest granddaughter, and she speaks perfectly Hebrew and English. That is Sivan. He is the son of my daughter Beatrice from her second marriage. And this is Maya, the daughter of Beatrice and Abraham they live in Israel. This is Elli. She is my daughter Beatrice's oldest daughter.
And how old was she?
She was about 3. That is my son, Ronald. He calls himself Chizkiyahu now, and his wife Batya. They live in Israel. These are my son's 5 children. The first one is Elisheva, and then is Shifra, then is Moshe, and then is Nathan, and then is Yaakov. This is to all my family. I hope they never have to go through what I went through, and I wish them always all the best. Mom.